American Vacations is funded by the American Automobile Association, a not-for-profit federation. AAA is the world's largest motorist organization with more than 33 million members. Join us on this edition of American Vacations as we explore the Pacific Northwest, from the mysterious rainforests of the coast to the volcanic grandeur of the Cascades. Frontiers of our country to be conquered, a land born of fire, sculpted by ice, with a destiny charted in its abundant waters and towering trees. The landscape is marked by diversity and contrast. Broad breakers roll in across seemingly endless expanses of sand. Snow-capped mountains jut into a misty sky. Mysterious rainforests shroud the secrets of ancient Indian cultures. And it is also the beginning of the great American desert, which modern man has been slowly turning into fertile plains. Wherever you look, it is a land of exquisite natural beauty. This is the Pacific Northwest. Begins in the Olympic Peninsula, in the northwest corner of the state of Washington. It is a vast area of over 1 million acres, bounded on the west by the Pacific, on the north by the Strait, and on the east by the Puget Sound. More than 57 unspoiled miles of coastline in all. Rising from the center of the peninsula are the rugged Olympic Mountains, which are surrounded by the Olympic National Park and National Forest. In many respects, the area remains unchanged from those early days when the first European settlers appeared on the scene. The dense forests still seem almost impenetrable, and the glacial streams remain wild and unpolluted. In looking around, it's easy to see why Washington has become known as the Evergreen State. The verdant landscape is perpetuated by the heavy precipitation which falls in the western portion of the state. And the heaviest rains of all are found on the peninsula. Annual amounts of 150 to 200 inches of moisture are not uncommon. The resulting rainforests are unique in this country. The Hoh rainforest is an excellent example. Off U.S. Highway 101, near the small town of Forks, the dense vegetation often threatens to choke off the many trails which run through the area. The Visitor Center at the Hoh provides informative displays as to the history and the flora and fauna in the area. It also serves as a jumping-off point for many of the self-guided nature tours, including the much photographed Hall of Mosses. The park and forest also abound with wildlife. Deer and the famed Olympic elk are found throughout the area, as well as less intimidating animals. At the northeast tip of the peninsula is the city of Port Townsend, one of the oldest communities in the state. Because of its location at the entrance to the Sound, Port Townsend became a very active trade center in the late 19th century. The town's Victorian architecture is considered some of the finest in the country. The city also has a major ferry terminal and is an excellent point of departure for further explorations of the Puget Sound and the San Juan Islands. The islands are a favorite cruising spot for local boaters and sailors. There are 172 in all. They range in size from small barren outcroppings to Orcas Island with more than 57 square miles of beaches, coves, and camping spots. The waters teem with marine life and the fishing is terrific. Salmon, cod, and flounder are among the most popular catches. Seals, dolphins, and killer whales are also often seen. And scuba divers tell of encounters with fearsome-looking but shy octopus. The larger islands in the Sound are populated, with many of the residents using the ferry system to commute to the mainland for work. Whidbey Island is one of these. Farms and forests flourish along with a very active tourist trade. The numerous bays and coves are popular with boaters and fishermen, as are the many parks and scenic shoreline. Deception Pass State Park on the northern tip of the island is the largest. With nearly 3,000 acres, it sits overlooking the cliff-line channel which separates Whidbey from Fidalgo Island. In addition to an underwater marine preserve, the park also contains a number of freshwater lakes. Seattle is the largest city in the Pacific Northwest, and with more than 1.6 million residents in the metro area, it continues to be one of the fastest-growing areas in the country. The Emerald City, as it is called, is sandwiched on a long, narrow strip of land between the Cascade Mountains and the Puget Sound, accessible in some directions only by floating bridge. Originally, Seattle was a lumbering center, and nearly all of the buildings were made of wood. Like Chicago, it too had a great fire. In 1889, a painter's glue pot boiled over, and most of the city went up in flames. The residents quickly began rebuilding, but this time with a broader and less flammable selection of materials. Much of the flavor of that era is captured in the Pioneer Square Historic District. Located just south of downtown near the waterfront, this 30-square block area features many historic structures which were constructed after the Great Fire, including Smith Tower, which, when it was built in 1905, at 42 stories, was the tallest building west of the Mississippi. At one time, the area was at the heart of Skid Road. Initially, the term referred to the route along which logs were transported to the sawmill by means of skids to help them through the mire that was created by the frequent rains. Eventually, the term was altered to Skid Row and entered the language as a phrase applied to rundown areas in most major cities. Contemporary Pioneer Square is far from rundown. It is a tribute to urban redevelopment with countless shops, boutiques, nightclubs, restaurants, and sidewalk cafes. A landscape pedestrian mall extends through most of the district, complete with a central waterfall and stream around its perimeter. A long fly ball from the square is the Kingdome, one of the largest indoor sports arenas in the country. In addition to being home of the Seattle Seahawks of the National Football League and the Baseball Mariners, it is also the site of frequent shows and concerts. You will also find yourself just a few steps from Seattle's so-called International District, the heart of the city's Oriental community. Populated mainly by Japanese and Chinese, the area offers a variety of import shops, cultural facilities, and, of course, a number of excellent restaurants. If your tastes run more toward seafood than Mugu Gai Pan, that craving can also be easily satisfied. From the chowder stands along the waterfront to posh salmon houses overlooking the city, the variety and availability of fresh marine delicacies is second to none. One of the most popular places to shop for these and other items is the Pike Place Market. Originally opened as a farmer's market in 1907, Pike Place now offers a wide array of goods and services. somewhat north of downtown proper, the Seattle Center has become the cultural hub of the city. This 74-acre facility is home to the Opera Association, the Symphony, and the nationally acclaimed Seattle Repertory Theater Company. Perhaps the most well-known landmark at the center is the Space Needle. In this complex, designed to represent a look at life in the 21st century, the 605-foot-high spire is hard to miss. At the top, 2 restaurants revolve in a full circle every hour, and the view from the observation deck is spectacular. About 40 miles south of Seattle is the city of Tacoma, home of the Point Defiance Park. The 700-acre compound sits on a promontory overlooking the Puget Sound and is one of the most diverse urban parks in the state. There are hiking and nature trails as well as picnicking facilities, or you can rent a rod and reel and drop a line from the fishing pier or from one of the many boats for hire. The park is also the site of Fort Nisqually, the first outpost of the Hudson's Bay Company on the Puget Sound. The fort features a replica of the oldest standing structure in the state, and the exhibits depict the history of the fur trading era. A few miles southwest of Tacoma is the state capital of Olympia, located at the southern end of the Puget Sound. In addition to being the seat of government, Olympia is famous for its oysters and its beer. It also happens to be one of the most beautiful state capitals in the country, with extensive Japanese gardens, antique malls, and a number of outstanding architectural efforts. About 50 miles east of Olympia, in the community of Eatonville, animals native to the region are on display. Northwest Trek is a 600-acre park which allows most of the animals to be shown in their native habitat. Moose, caribou, and elk are among some of the more popular exhibits. As you move east in the state, you are rather quickly confronted by the Cascade Range. This rugged spine of mountains runs south from Canada through both Washington and Oregon and presents a natural barrier which dramatically changes the climate and character of the eastern portion of these states. The average height of the range is from 5,000 to 8,000 feet, with 4 of Washington's peaks soaring much higher. Mount Rainier tops more than 14,400 feet. There used to be a 5th giant among these titans, but in May of 1980, with a low rumble and a sharp blast, Mount St. Helens was reduced to a mere 8,364 feet. The catastrophic eruption was a grim reminder of the powerful volcanic forces which originally shaped the Northwest's geography. Today, 110,000 acres around the peak have been designated as the Mount St. Helens National Volcanic Monument. Occasionally, the mountain still rumbles, and access to the area is limited. One can only imagine the incredible forces lurking inside, which blew over 1,300 feet off the top of the mountain and sent a plume of smoke and ashes spewing 80,000 feet into the sky. Life around Mount St. Helens has slowly returned to normal, but evidence of the massive destruction produced by the eruption is still plain to see. And seismic activity continues to be carefully monitored to help man learn more about the forces which he cannot control. Of Mount St. Helens perches Mount Rainier, seemingly serene in its glacial splendor. But it too owes its birth to the molten magma which gushed from a fissure within the Earth's crust. Mount Rainier Pioneer National Park is, in fact, considered one of the most beautiful in the country. And the mountain's glacial cap makes it even more interesting to both scientists and tourists. Its 34 square miles of glaciers constitute the largest single-peak system of its kind in the contiguous United States. On the eastern side of the mountains, in the northern part of the state, a trough left by one of these glaciers has formed one of the most stunning lakes in the Pacific Northwest, Lake Chelan. The lake extends more than 55 miles into the Cascades and is fed by 27 glaciers and 59 streams. The waters are exceedingly cold and deep. The bottom is often 1,500 feet beneath the surface. The lake and its heavily wooded shores provide a full array of outdoor recreation. And for those who just want to look, excursion boats make frequent runs across the dark blue waters. As you continue east across the state, the farms become more frequent again. Patches of timber begin to reappear, and in the distance is the dim outline of more mountains. You are entering some of the most prolific wheat-growing country in the world. You will also note that the climate is considerably different from that on the western side of the state. The summers are much hotter, and the winters far more severe. In the city of Spokane, residents have devised an interesting way to deal with both the heat and the cold. Many of the buildings in the downtown area are connected by an elaborate system of enclosed skywalks which allow pedestrians to move from one place to another in relative comfort. Spokane is the second largest city in the state. It began as a small trading post, the first non-Indian settlement in the Pacific Northwest. Spokane is known as the Lilac City, and flowers and gardens are found throughout the community. Some of the best examples are located in Manitou Park. You will also find a beautiful Japanese garden in Riverfront Park. But there is much, much more to this 50-acre compound, which was originally developed for the World Expo in 1974. Just east of Spokane, you cross the Idaho state line. This is the so-called panhandle of the Gem State. Less than 50 miles wide and more than 100 long, this inland isthmus contains some of the most spectacular scenery in the western United States. This is mountain country, but it's also the home of several large lakes, Priest, Pend Oreille, and Coeur d'Alene. The latter once cited by National Geographic magazine as one of the 5 most beautiful lakes in the world. The lake, surrounded by jagged mountains and dense, lush forests, is long and narrow. Many parts of the shoreline are inaccessible other than by boat. The undeveloped Maury State Park is one such area and considered a primitive jewel. Coeur d'Alene is also a birdwatcher's paradise. The lake provides habitat for one of the country's largest populations of ospreys, and bald eagles can often be seen diving out of the sky to snatch a finny meal from the deep blue waters. If you happen to venture near the small community of Arco, about halfway between Boise and Idaho Falls in the southern part of the state, you will come upon a site which is absolutely eerie. Vast lava fields covered by cinder cones with large central vents give the countryside an otherworldly air. You have arrived at Craters of the Moon National Monument. These strange formations resembling the lunar surface are the result of volcanic activity dating back some 15,000 years. The 83 square mile park contains more basaltic volcanic features than any other area of its size in the continental United States. Throughout the area, you will find other peculiar volcanic phenomena as well. Lava caves with tubes ranging up to 50 feet in diameter, and some are hundreds of feet long. They make for fascinating exploration, but sturdy shoes and a heavy-duty flashlight are advised. As you might have guessed, agriculture and forestry are still the leading contributors to the state's economy. Idaho's potatoes get most of the publicity, but the rich soil and ample water supply produce other major crops as well. Tourism is another major industry. Camping, boating, hunting, and fishing are superb. And for those seeking that extra special adrenaline rush, whitewater rafting down the state's world-class rapids will offer all that you can handle. The Hells Canyon National Recreation Area straddles the Idaho-Oregon state line. With more than 603,000 acres, the area presents a variety of outdoor recreational opportunities. Eventually, the snake joins forces with the Columbia River as it moves inexorably on its journey to the sea. Forming a large portion of the border between Oregon and Washington, the Columbia River Gorge is a gateway to a vast outdoor recreational playground, including the Mount Hood Scenic Loop Highway through the Cascade Range. The peak is surrounded by the Mount Hood National Forest, which encompasses more than 1.1 million acres of wilderness and developed recreational areas. The mountain supports several living glaciers, and their runoff feeds 160 lakes and more than 4,000 miles of streams. Directly south of the scenic highway, atop the crest of the Cascade Range, is Crater Lake National Park. The lake is another of those natural wonders which owes its birth to the volcanic activity which racked the area some 6,800 years ago. At one time, this was the site of Mount Mazama, a 12,000-foot volcano which jutted into the northwestern sky. Then, violent eruptions released the molten magma from deep within the mountain's center, and the top of the mountain literally fell into itself. Over the years, the resulting crater, or caldera as it is called by geologists, filled with water, forming the lake, which is 26 miles around. Highway 62 carries you out of the park and into the state's southwestern corner and back toward the more temperate climate of the coast. There are a couple of stops you may wish to make along the way. One is in the city of Ashland. A town of some 15,000, Ashland represents a kind of crossroads for cultural and outdoor activity. Ashland is home of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which runs from February through October and is one of the oldest celebrations of the writer's works in the Western Hemisphere. If spelunking, as opposed to sonnets, is more your cup of tea, then not far from Ashland, you will find the Oregon Caves National Monument. The caverns are located inside Mount Elijah in the Siskiyou Mountains. A tour of the caves is moderately strenuous, and a guide is required, but the spectacular underground sites are well worth the effort. In the distance, the Pacific beckons. Both Oregon and Washington have some of the longest beaches in the world, broken only by rocky headlands which add to the pristine beauty. The shoreline is constantly changing. In some places, the big trees creep very near the water's edge, and in others, miles of large sand dunes offer desolate tranquility. Sunbathing can sometimes be a chancy proposition, but the clam diggers and surf fishermen don't seem to mind. Rock hunters are also often drawn to the shores, particularly around Agate Beach. Charter boats ply the offshore waters in search of salmon and tuna. For others, the beach provides an opportunity to simply sit and relax. Blessed with a mild climate and magnificent vistas, the city of Portland is Oregon's largest and one of the busiest ports in the nation, a major shipping center to the Pacific Rim. To its residents, it is the city of roses, and gardens of these flowers flourish throughout the metropolitan area. The Rose Festival is its most important annual celebration. There are several examples of this civic love affair with the thorny bush, such as the sunken beds at the Peninsula Rose Garden. But perhaps the best is found in Washington Park, where the International Rose Test Garden is located. In addition to the Rose Garden, there are Japanese gardens in the park as well. In all, the park encompasses 145 acres of various activities, from jogging trails to tennis courts. Portland is a city of interesting architecture. The old blends comfortably with the new, and it has long been a community attractive to artists and artisans. Not far from Portland, in the community of Newburgh, the history of the state is celebrated in a different way. The 568 acres of Champoeg State Park contains several structures which relate to the establishment of the first provisional American government in the region. From these rugged beginnings sprang the spirit which built the Pacific Northwest we see today, a vibrant region which combines modern technology with old-fashioned virtues and a love of the great outdoors. Now, however, our time amongst the trees and the water is at an end. We hope this brief visit has inspired you to plan your own adventure to the Pacific Northwest. After all, the best journey is the one you take yourself. Have a great trip. An hour-long version of the Pacific Northwest is available from the AAA Travel Video Series by calling 1-800-875-5000. This tour is $24.95 plus shipping and handling. This program has been distributed in association with the Pacific Mountain Network and International Video Corporation. American Vacations is funded by the American Automobile Association, a not-for-profit federation. AAA is the world's largest motorist organization with more than 33 million members.